I'm paying him $30 an hour on the books. I'm not sure how much. So he basically wants to sell the guy's labor.
Yeah, and that's very common, especially in trades. You'll have an hourly rate for guys to come out and work on your property or work on your building or yard or plumbing, whatever it is. The typical number is...
I'm Scott Hess, tax and business consultant.
I'm John Barton, small business owner. Remember the tortoise and the hare? Slow and steady wins the race.
We started Turtlesmith to help people start small businesses, providing information and resources to small business owners and entrepreneurs.
Build a solid foundation and forge your dreams.
This is always annoying to ask, but if you're liking this content, please like and subscribe. It's the best way for us to get more followers and more people engaged in this great business content. You can also follow us on all socials at TurtlesmithOK and find us at turtlesmith.com. What's going on, man? Back for another one.
Yeah, we're back for another one. I had a full day buying out of Joann's fabric.
Yeah, I heard you went a little crazy over there. You're trying to sell me on some stuff.
Yeah. I think you need to become a basketball fan and develop a taste for displaying basketballs, because I got the acrylic cases for you.
Okay. All right. I'll take up a new hobby. Well, this is kind of exciting week. We've got our first on-air giveaway that we're going to be doing at the end of the episode. We just did the, was it Calderon
Dance Festival.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And we had a little raffle set up there. So it'd be kind of fun. Give away a prize. Yeah.
We decided that we were going to go out and kind of pitch ourselves to the visitors at the Calderon Festival. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting. They moved it to Myriad Gardens here.
It's a nice spot over there.
It is a nice spot, but I think the flavor of the festival was a little bit different than it had been in the past, because in the past it was on the Plaza District where the Namesakes studio used to be.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And there was a little bit more of a different vibe there, more artistic, little more artist. This one was the vendors were a little bit more commercial, and the flavor was a little bit different. But we did have a Thunder game happening at the same time, so we did get to meet a bunch of people that were in town for that. Yeah,
that's always exciting.
Yeah.
Well, what do you got for us this week, Calvin? I think we're talking about salaries, how to pay people.
Oh boy, a fun one.
Figuring out pay is a combination of market research and understanding your company. Market research would be looking in and Googling companies like yours, figuring out what they're paying for those roles that are of the similar title, versus understanding your own company, which is understanding, what do I offer outside of pay? Do I offer flexible hours? Do I have benefits? Do I have a profit share plan? Do I have an equity plan? Do I offer work from home? Like, what are my strategic advantages that are more attractive than pay? And then you have to weigh those things out. So then I would say, once you figure out what people are paying market rate for somebody, does it make more sense for me to pay on the lower end or higher end? And so I think that you have to decide as a company what you want your strategic advantage to be.
So she makes a great point about how to kind of determine what the salary should be, because it's different for each job and particularly each geographic location. For the same job here in Oklahoma City, you're getting paid quite a bit less than if you worked in like New York City or LA or something like that. So doing some research online is a great start to figure out how much to pay.
It is, I guess, it's a decent way to look and see what people are making for the type of job you're offering. But from a small business perspective, it's tough sometimes, because if you're not making enough to even pay yourself, then how can you pay someone else? So that's a whole other issue.
It is, yeah. And really you have to kind of think about it, whether you're coming at it from a startup standpoint or if you've been in business for a while and you're still struggling and you need to hire somebody. You just kind of have to figure out the give and take there.
Yeah. We'll get into a little bit more depth after we watch this, but it's definitely one of the harder things, I think, when you're doing business as a small business owner.
It is. The business owner themselves, they're incentivized to pay the least amount possible for the most work. And the employee wants to get paid the most amount possible for the least amount of work. And so it becomes a little bit of a give and take where you both kind of have to compromise on what's reasonable. Yeah. And what's reasonable is tough to determine, but there's also a lot of resources out there. I think Indeed and some of those other places even have like little helpful salary calculators on where your kind of job should land. Whenever I put an ad up for one of our positions, depending on the title, and when I say that we're in Oklahoma City, it gives a salary range to put on there, like a
Isn't there another
suggested
website
one.
too where people actually talk about what they make in different
Yeah.
positions?
Yeah, a lot of places. And again, as the business owner, because that's who we're talking about, you want to try to pay a reasonable salary for your people, but you also don't want to break the bank trying to overpay them because you still got to make money. What's the next one?
At my company, I pay my plumbers hourly with performance incentives. So basically, when they hit certain performance metrics, they get a bump in pay. And I do this because you need to reward good behavior if you want that behavior to continue to happen. If you just pay them a base wage and you never reward them for performing well, they have a hard time knowing what performing well looks like. And number two, they have no incentive to perform well. At my company,
So that's a great idea for a lot of companies, depending on what kind of industry you're in, but some type of bonus pay or incentive structure.
Yeah, I'd like to know how it works with him. So like, that's always been the little bit of a struggle to kind of figure out like what things deserve a reward, right? Like what is
It is, yeah.
And I'm not sure how that like in that situation would it be finishing a job in less time than was thought that it was estimated? Would it be finishing a job with less coming in under budget?
Well, there's several different ways you can look at it. I think the easiest model to think about is sales guys that are on commission. A lot of them will have a base pay and then they get a percentage of whatever they sell. That is very easy to quantify. If you sell $100,000 worth of product and you have let's say a 3% commission, you're getting an extra $3,000 a month for your sales. So that's very easy, but you're right. Quantifying what a plumber would get, which is what that guy had mentioned, how do you tell whether he did a good enough job for a bonus or not? Is he getting the jobs done quickly? And then if you're paying them to get them done quickly, does that then quality then suffer because they're rushing
that was
through?
the next thing. What if you have to come back? Like
Right.
these guys just had to come back and take out all the tile at my house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another one that I've seen is extra money for like especially trades, like getting good reviews or mentioning. But then you have the guys out on the job hounding the homeowner for a 5-star review so they can get their extra $20. So it does become pretty difficult to figure out a good incentive structure within your business, but it has to be what's important to you. So what's important to you as the business owner? Is it speed, even if you have to go back and fix stuff? Is it getting the job done perfectly the first time? Is it coming in under budget? What do you want to reward as the business owner?
Right. And I think it's worth it. Like the one thing the guy said there is, if they have no incentive to perform well, then they generally won't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the people that are driven from internally to always try to do their best or do the best job, they generally are going to be in a really good position at some point, or they're going to be on their own because that's kind of how they're driven.
Right.
So yeah, it is important to kind of, as a business owner, to think about what does good performance mean,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just what's important to you as the business owner.
Yeah, and how you quantify that. How do you communicate that to your employees?
Yep.
One thing though that comes to mind thinking about that is if you do go down that road of having a base plus incentives, you need to also take into account things that are outside employees' control that would stop them from achieving a bonus. So
yeah, that's important. There's a lot of outside factors that could, especially if the bonus is very rigid, like we have to come in under budget and then there was an unforeseen expense that's not their fault,
And that becomes a management thing where you have to, you manage your own expectations and you also have allowances, for that. There are a lot of times when my employees will be standing around with they've got nothing to do. And of course I can find 10 things for them to do. but it
Yeah.
just doesn't occur to them.
Yeah.
So the thing is that I see things from a perspective as a business owner that they're never going to see because it's just not their thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really up to me to look around and think of all the things that they could be doing and make a list of those things and say, if I catch you standing around and you haven't done all these things on this list, then we have a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we
So-
talked about that a little bit last time. It's more just having like a good standard operating procedure and that
Right.
kind of thing. One of the more common ways for small businesses to give bonuses or incentives is oftentimes either a revenue sharing model or a profit sharing model. So you, as the business owner, set goals for either revenue or for the profit. Now, sometimes profit's a little trickier because if there's a lot of overhead or depending on the industry, it's way outside the employee's control. So revenue would be a little bit better. But if you hit certain goals, then you give bonuses to all your employees. And that really incentivizes everybody at the company to become a salesperson for your company.
Right.
You know, they're trying to get their friends in, drag people that they know in, they're talking about on the street. If business is increasing or revenue is increasing, then they're getting paid more.
Or it incentivizes them to be more efficient, and make sure
Correct.
the company can produce more
Yeah.
in less time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, in my mind, that's one of the best ways to do it, is to be as open as possible with the employees about, where you're at as a company,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can see the metrics, they can see the benchmarks, and hopefully then, almost everybody pulls together in the same direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is why I think sales usually or revenue is the best way to model that off, because that's the easiest thing to be able to show employees when if you start trying to do it on a profit share and give them, all the information on how we got to the net income, there's maybe too much for them to grasp or understand, insurance and taxes and all the stuff that you have to think about. So it becomes a little bit more complicated than just, we need to hit 50,000 in sales this month for you to get a bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, next question. How much of an upcharge do you put on your employees' hourly rates? So not sure if this is a stupid question. I'm a contractor that recently hired my first employee. I'm paying him $30 an hour on the books, but I'm not sure how much to charge customers for his hourly rate. Is $35 an hour too low given the cost of employing him outside of his salary, taxes, and insurance? Just curious about what other people typically do in these situations. Well, go ahead.
No, well, I was going to say, so I'm paying him $30 an hour on the books. I'm not sure how much. So he basically wants to sell the guy's labor.
And that's very common, especially in trades. You'll have an hourly rate for guys to come out and work on your property or work on your building or yard or plumbing, whatever it is. The typical number is 4 times what you pay them, 3 to 4 times. So if you're paying them $30 an hour, you should be charging the customer $120 an hour.
That's a typical rate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you ever see trades guys come out and you're like, why am I paying $150 an hour? That's usually what it is. And the reason for that is $30 an hour goes to the employee. $30 an hour is going to the overhead of your company. $30 an hour is going to taxes and insurance and all that stuff. And then $30 is your profit. And that's kind of how it works out. A lot of industries use that similar type of deal. I believe we talked about it in a prior episode about how restaurants charge for food. It's usually 4 times the food cost. And this is a very similar deal, 4 times the hourly rate.
It's kind of across the board, whether it's goods or services, generally, because you have to consider a wholesaler in the mix, and the retail chain, so to speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting. I've never really thought of it that way because I don't really sell trade labor.
Yeah, well, makes sense. This is what a lot of my clients do that are in the trades, is that 4 times, sometimes 3 times, depending on whether you're the only one doing the work as the owner, or if it's a really competitive industry, like there's a lot of people. Sometimes they'll lower that down a little.
I think though that in this situation, and this is kind of getting off topic, but it seems to me that leaves the door open for a lot of people to kind of do off the books works for a lot less, so you might work for someone and your employer is charging $120 for your labor, selling it to the homeowner or whomever. and then off the books, you do that same work for someone for half that price, and then they're happy.
That's true, but the off the books work, as the homeowner, it doesn't come with the insurance. There's no company to sue if something goes wrong.
That's true.
There's no guarantee for the work. So you do get what you pay for, but that is a extremely common thing that happens in all the trades. I mean, there's plumbers who will come out working for a company, they'll give a quote, and then they'll slip the guy his card and say, call me off the books and I can do it for half.
So the answer to the question here is $35 too low.
Way
the answer
too low.
would be yes.
Way too low. Yeah, drastically too low. And if you're paying them $30 an hour, if that's a W-2 wage, you're not thinking about the 8 to 10%, depending on what state you're in, of the FICA taxes that you have to pay, the insurance that you have to pay for that employee, and especially any benefits or anything like that. So that is exceedingly too low for the hourly rate. It needs to be at least 3 times, if not 4 times, for you to be a profitable company.
Okay. Well, there we go. You had to throw this one in, didn't you, Calvin?
Yeah. So how concerned are you with paying full-time employees a living wage? So I live in a high cost of living area, and it seems to me that if it takes a person 40 hours a week to do a job, that job should support their ability to live with dignity. I know I could pay close to minimum wage and still find staff, but that feels wrong. It's also not a great business decision if I don't want to deal with constant turnover, but that's not my main concern here. How do you approach this question with your business?
Oh, man. I struggle with this all the time. I'm very concerned about trying to pay people a living wage. But what is a living wage? Calvin, what is the actual definition of a living wage? Is it a certain amount above the poverty line? Is there an actual formula for this? Do you know?
I don't. I would imagine it's just being able to pay all your bills. So it can kind of be individualized to the,
Okay, the minimum hourly amount that a full-time worker needs to earn to cover their basic needs and those of their family without relying on public assistance. So
I think that's the big key there, no public assistance.
Right. And so the question then I have there is that would obviously be different for a single person than it would be with someone with a family.
Well, and it can also range wildly on an individual's need, even if they're single. We know some people, or we've talked to people who come in here and maybe they have 3 or 4 cars that they don't need and they need to get rid of one, or they've made some poor financial decisions or in credit card debt or something like that. Their living wage is much higher than somebody who was smart with their money.
But I wouldn't consider that their living wage. I'd consider that their
needed wage, maybe.
It's their luxury wage because they're living above their means.
Yeah. Well, and that's everybody almost lives above their means, unfortunately.
Yeah. But I don't think just existence is living with dignity necessarily.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that definition of a living wage is you're existing, but you're not really living. If you can't afford to enjoy yourself, or you can't, you work 40 hours and then you have no money to do anything other than just exist, I don't think that's a living wage.
I agree.
So the answer to that is, for me, is yes, I'm very concerned. And unless I have a business that's profitable enough, it's very difficult to pay a living wage in certain circumstances.
It really, industries is where it's at, different industries, because it's hard to pay a living wage at your pool hall. That's a tough one. It's tough to pay servers and bartenders a real living wage. We are in a tip-based community or a society. And so really all restaurants and stuff like that expect tips. And that's what the servers and bartenders are supposed to live on. Whether that's right or wrong, I'm not here to debate. But
now, having said that, though, from what I understand, we do pay a lot more on an hourly basis than
you do
plus tips.
Yeah, by far with their tips, you pay a basic wage that is good for anybody in Oklahoma. That is what we considered. And again, I think bartending and serving is definitely a skilled labor, but it's relatively, there's not a high education level or anything like that. So for the job that you are having them perform, you in my opinion are overpaying them. So I think we've talked about that more than once. But
Good thing they don't watch the podcast.
I mean, they can if they want. You're the boss of it. I'm just saying.
Right.
But with tips, they're making.
So would you
quite a bit of
consider
money.
what I pay at the pool room to be a living wage for that job?
Yes. Yeah, I would consider that a living wage. As long as they're getting okay tips, that's actually a pretty good wage for Oklahoma. We pay for everybody here in the office. We definitely pay a living wage, but they're all, bookkeepers, accountants, and a lawyer. So
Now Walmart, they may not do this anymore, but years ago they used to hand out flyers to new employees, telling them how to go and apply for welfare and food stamps.
and that is not a living wage.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Minimum wage or even a few dollars more than minimum wage is in no way a living wage for anybody, no matter where you're at.
So do you think that there should be like a hard calculation for every area that says this is the living wage for this area?
That would be a
And-
good idea. Yeah.
And all employers in that area have to pay at least that.
Maybe. The problem that we come into is it becomes more of an economic question. Like everybody wanted to jump the minimum wage up to $15, right, an hour. It becomes really difficult because once you jump everything up to $15 an hour, all the prices are going to raise on
Everything shifts,
everything. And so then it shifts up. And so then the buying power of $15 is the buying power of $7.25, which is the minimum wage today. So it rapidly catches up. So we get a little bit of a boost, but then the economy catches up with it. And that's how we end up with
Right, but I think
hyperinflation.
that we've been 725 for like 25 years or something,
Yeah.
30 years. It is, this is again getting off topic, but it becomes hard to reconcile, I think, for a lot of people why executive pay goes up so high, in the same period of time, but the minimum wage and then wages tied to the minimum wage, don't really go up. And the cost of living, though, has gone up steadily.
100%.
So, when we speak of buying power, people's buying power at 725 is a lot less now than it was 30 years ago.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I was just saying that question is a little beyond my scope. Why can't we just raise it up to 15? Why can't we pay everybody $30 an hour so they can really live? It just becomes this kind of strange economic question that is above my head.
Right. Well, when you're in a free market and people can set prices whatever they want, then of course prices do get set primarily on costs of, manufacturer or cost of providing the service.
Right.
Now, having said that, though, you take a company like, say, McDonald's or something like that, right? If they raised up their minimum wage to $15 an hour, which I think that's maybe where it is right now anyway for most McDonald's, the actual cost of the meal only goes up like about 50 cents.
Yeah.
Because of the volume that they do.
Yeah.
Now, for somebody like me who does, in comparison, a super low volume, the price of my goods, might have to go up more than 50 cents when you consider it as a percentage of what the price was before.
Right.
So, but we saw that during COVID. We saw that they raised prices. They had a hard time after COVID finding people.
Yeah.
Prices got raised up. There's no more 99-cent menu,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yep.
But now prices are starting to come back down, when they're starting to feel the competitive pressure.
Yeah.
Anyway, the answer is there was, what was the question again?
Well, just in general, what should we be paying people? And the last question
is
was
it a living wage? Is it of concern? For me, it's of concern for sure, because I don't like the thought of people who work for me not being or struggling to exist.
Yeah.
I really would not like the thought of them, having to go and be on welfare or be on food stamps, based on if they're working full time for me.
Right. Right. Well, one of the things, and I've kind of talked to all of our employees about it, and a tip for you as a small business owner is really just to sit down with your employees and make sure they're good. So I sit down, ask them what their salary goals are, where they need to be at, where they're comfortable, and what a living wage is to them so that they're happy with their salary. And you need to make sure that you can afford that as a business owner before you agree, obviously. But, really just keeping an open line of communication with your employees and not trying to be a miser and pay them as little as possible and work them to the bone is the key for small businesses.
Yeah. And employees out there, if you're watching this, if you want somebody to pay you a living wage, then, give them work that justifies it, because it's real hard
Yeah.
for employers when they know that they're paying every single hour that you're there and they don't see work coming out of you.
100%. Yeah. And one of the kind of sit down conversations I had with Tiffany before she started working here, she's the attorney that works in our office and obviously one of the more higher paid people with a law degree. And so I sat down with her and I just asked, what salary do you need to get at? And, it was more than I could afford at the time. And I go, that's not possible. I'm here. But then we talked about it. I go, okay, here's how we can get there. This is what needs to happen in my business for me to be able to afford to pay you what you want. And if you work with me, we can get there together. And then that's what ended up happening. And it worked out well. So
I like that approach. Sometimes when I had a situation with a company in Germany that was the biggest producer of vinyl, like upholstery grade vinyl.
Yeah.
And they normally didn't deal with people my size. They had a showroom. I could go to the showroom. I could buy stuff. But they normally didn't deal with it. But I gave them the same sort of pitch. I said, look, I can't afford to buy your minimum right now.
Mm-hmm.
But if you will let me buy, my minimum, what I need, right? Then I promise you within a year, I will be buying your minimum on, a roll at a time or,
if you just work with me.
Yeah, 50,000 yards, 100 yards or whatever at a time. Yeah. And to my surprise, they said, sure. And then within a year, I came good on the promise and we were buying at that rate.
Yeah, and that as a small business, I think that's a great example of how to work with your employees and vendors as well. Just be open and honest. Well, any final thoughts on what to pay? It's a difficult question. I hope we kind of answered it a little bit. I think just being open with your employees and then doing the research. Like I said, there's a lot of tools out there that can give you the good salary range for certain titles.
So the only thing I would say about that for me is a big concern is know that you can afford to pay someone not necessarily in the absolute worst of times, but if there's some kind of a downturn, you want to know that you can pay them every month on time, no matter what. Whenever the paycheck comes, you don't want to withhold someone's paycheck. I hear that story so much where people are like, oh, I have to wait on my check. My boss doesn't have enough money. To me, that is just not great. No. And I have borrowed money in the past to be able to guarantee an employee's salary for, say, 6 months.
Yeah.
And that's just really important to me. And the thing that I hate the most is letting someone go because I miscalculated and didn't have enough money. And I was kind of betting on them bringing in more money to pay for themselves.
Yeah, don't ever do that. But definitely budget and plan and have a backup plan and a backup to the backup plan to make sure you can make payroll.
Yeah, and we didn't talk about this as well, but like one thing that comes to my mind too is if especially when you're hiring, say, your first employee or your first couple employees, the reason that you're hiring them is basically to replace yourself. Mm-hmm. In my mind, right? Because if you're starting a business and you're doing the work and you get so much business that you need help, right? For the most part, you're going to need them to be doing things that you don't want to do or can't do, right? Maybe there's something that you're really good at that they can't do, but they need to take care of all the other tasks.
Right.
So you always think to yourself, what would I pay myself to do these things?
Yeah, that's a great thought.
And if you can afford to pay yourself extra to do that, then that's what you use to pay an employee.
And you can also use the aspect of what would it cost me to have like an outside firm do this? Like if you're looking to hire a bookkeeper or something, how much would it cost for an accounting firm to do it? And then how much should I pay somebody?
Right. And sometimes that's a better way to go. Like I pay you a monthly amount. You do a lot for me that's outside of accounting, I think.
Well, yeah, but
but that's the business services part of the business,
Yeah, we try to do a lot more.
Right.
So. Well, I think we got to get to our drawing here.
Oh yeah.
You want me to go first?
Go for it. Yeah. So this is a drawing for the last show that we did, the last booth that we had, right?
Yes. I guess we're giving away the Transformer, Lego. Super exciting.
The Bumblebee one, right? The beetle.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me shake it up.
I have a great picture of me with a beetle when I was back in Germany.
Yeah.
I bought a 1963, and I've got this picture where I'm driving, and I'm really hunched up over the steering wheel and looking angry, and I am angry because I can't find like the hospital I'm supposed to go to. And in Germany, they have a lot of traffic lights, a lot of traffic cameras.
Yeah.
So they took a picture, they sent it to the address that was on my license or on my license plate, right? And my boss, my staff sergeant, got on my ass about it. He goes, "Oh, you're supposed to be representing the United States and everything and all this and everything." And I was like, "That's a pretty cool picture. Can I have it?"
All right, the winner of the Lego Transformer, Diana G.
Diana G.
Congratulations, Diana
Okay.
G. Hey, right on.
And Diana will be notified how?
Dylan will be notifying Diana tomorrow.
All right. Congratulations, Diana G.
Yeah, I hope you love Bumblebee Transformer. All right, you got one down there too.
All right, what are we doing here? Let's see. My turn. We're doing this one is okay. Now these are different bowls here. So was that different days or something?
No, different bowls, so I didn't get them mixed up for the prizes.
Okay. All right, so here we go. This is for an Instax Fujifilm instant photo thing. This is my kids love this 2 Christmases ago, and now I don't even think they know where it's at. All right, here we go. Eyes closed. All right, what do we got here? All right. Okay, we have Caitlin M.
Right on.
Yay.
Caitlin M.
Yeah, and all right, and we have Caitlin's gonna have her Insta. Caitlin, if you happen to see this podcast at some point in the future, show us some instant photos of your something cool with your business if you're doing business, and feel free to email it to us and we'll highlight it at some point. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think we'll have some more giveaways in the future as our plan, so stay tuned and maybe you'll win something cool.
Oops. All right, I'm putting it right in the box here.
You're good.
Okay.
All right. Well, be sure to follow us, Turtlesmith OK, at all socials, and then check all of our cool information out on turtlesmith.com. We'll see you next week.
All right. See y'all later.
This is always annoying to ask, but if you're liking this content, please like and subscribe. It's the best way for us to get more followers and more people engaged in this great business content. You can also follow us on all socials at TurtlesmithOK and find us at turtlesmith.com.
Please like and subscribe.